Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Twimbit Immersion. The topic for today's conversation is, are super apps the way to winning share in the digital economy? Over the last, 12 months or so, we see that there is enormous amount of interest among companies in this region, be it telecom companies, financial services organizations, or conglomerates, or looking at, hey, is super app the way forward for us to engage and build value in the digital economy? And we thought what best than to bring together some of the region's experts who have been tracking the telecommunications and digital economies to have this conversation. So I'm Manoj Menon, founder and CEO at Twimbit, and I'm delighted to have two esteemed guests joining me for this conversation. First up, I have Sachin Mittal, Executive Director at DBS. Sachin has a career spanning over 2 decades in telecommunications as an analyst. So Sachin, great to have you, and thanks for agreeing to have this very candid conversation and share your insights.
Happy to join, Manoj. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And then I also have my colleague Inderpreet Kaur. Inderpreet is a research manager with Twimbit. She again has maybe a decade and a half of experience working as an analyst, more as a industry analyst, looking at telecom companies, looking at digital companies, and she can bring and share some of the latest research and her perspectives and Twimbit's perspectives on these markets. So great to have you, Inderpreet.
Thank you, Manoj.
Excellent. Fabulous. So some quick housekeeping rules. We want to make it as engaging as possible. So my request is, guys, start by, if you don't mind, start by saying hello in the chat, because it's so difficult for us to know exactly what is going on in your mind. I wish we had an in-person session. If we can't do it, let's at least engage with us. Give us your feedback as you hear, you agree, you disagree, you vehemently object to something we are saying, or you have a question or a comment, please go ahead and do that, right? You're welcome to turn on the video. It will be cool. We get an as immersive an experience as possible. And feel free to connect with any of the speakers here. If you want to put your LinkedIn profile in the chat so that other attendees can connect with you, feel free to do that as well. So use this chat room to connect, network, and build awareness and learn more about the subject. So the next slide, so what do we plan to learn today? One, we want to get a quick understanding of the digital economy in ASEAN. Many companies are looking at super apps as their digital strategy. Is that the right way forward? We are biased a little bit more towards telcos because the three of us have spent maybe a large part of our life studying telecom companies, saying, so every telecom company is saying, should we build a super app? Is that the way forward? So maybe we'll dwell a little bit into detail on that as well. Right? So with that, I think that being the core objective, and the other questions, we'll take it as you guys, as we proceed. No? So let's start with the first question. So even before I ask Sachin this question, I would love to hear what the audience think. And let's start with the first poll question. And if we can have the first poll, is there an opportunity for a super app in ASEAN or India? And what do you think? Is it, we are seeing it happen right now. Super apps are scaling rapidly. There are clear local leaders to dominate. Fragmented landscape with too many ecosystems. Super app bubble is expected to burst eventually. So feel free to take your favorite answer from all of them, and we will look at the response. So maybe I'll start with Sachin. Sachin, is there an opportunity for a super app in markets like ASEAN or in India, where Tata has just launched Tata Neu? So Paytm has been there. So what is your comment? What is your assessment?
So should we wait for the poll to have the results, or should I start with my response?
You can start, and then we will see whether you are right in your prediction, if the audience agrees with you or not.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, Peter, you can share the results as and when it is ready. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So my thinking is that super apps I mean, depending on how you define SUPERAPP, I define SUPERAPP as one-stop center for various unrelated services. It can be e-commerce, mobility, beauty salon, massage, all these services, one-stop center. I define that as SUPERAPP, but that's how it emerged from China. And in my opinion, and I may be biased again, I do think that was a very, very unique phenomena in China, and that is unlikely to happen in Southeast Asia for at least three big reasons. Maybe I can share light on one by one.
Yeah.
Firstly, till late 2021, which was the last 6 to 7 years when Alibaba and Tencent were there, for the last good 6-7 years, if you are a Alibaba, you did not accept WeChat Pay. If you are a WeChat or user or a Tencent ecosystem player, you are, let's say, a delivery partner of Tencent, you will not accept Alipay. So these two were the dominant payment systems, and they did not accept even each other's payment. So you belong to either camp. So if you are Taobao, you will not accept WeChat. If you're Ali.me, the delivery partner, you won't accept WeChat, and vice versa. Imagine two guys dominating the whole space, and just everyone chooses their favorite, right? There are two camps, number one. Number two, look at, if you are, let's say you're looking in China, you're looking to buy a garment, you want to buy a dress, let's say a shirt in my case, and you type on their Google equivalent, which is Baidu. There's no Google in China, so you go to Baidu. Baidu cannot search the pages of Alibaba. Baidu cannot search the pages of Tencent. They're blocked. Baidu is blocked by these two guys. So essentially, if you want to go to find the shop on Alibaba, you end up in Alibaba and you search within Alibaba. Similarly, you go to WeChat and then you search within WeChat. In Southeast Asia, we just type in Google and we get what we want. And it will go to all e-commerce players, whichever is there, right? So that's the second way of looking at things. And the third reason, we do have a WhatsApp Pay in Southeast Asia. And in China, there's no WhatsApp. There's a WeChat Pay, the dominant player. And from they use their dominance to start the payments. And then that's how they kind of morphed into a big giant. So all these three conditions are absent in Southeast Asia. Okay. And last not the least is maybe a fourth point, if I may add. Smartphones, especially those from China, are much cheaper now. They can support a number of apps. You don't need to limit yourself to 1 or 2 apps or 3 apps. So I think these are the broad 3-4 reasons. I don't believe that SUPERAPP phenomena, which we are seeing now, is going to continue like this.
Okay, good. You can see the responses from the audience. It's fairly fragmented. People are still trying to form their opinion on it. And that's why they're all attending the session. So
I'm in minority. I lost the poll.
Yeah. But you can see that people are seeing it happen right now, and they think that there's a lot more people looking at it. And your comments?
I think in my understanding of a SUPERAPP, I do have a similar view as Sachin has. So I see it as a cohesive ecosystem which will fulfill most of my digital needs. So when I say cohesive, I mean that these services are aligned or tied to each other in some way. And my analogy comes from a very primitive ecosystem of Apple. Apple has its own music service, its own messaging service, its own let's say TV service. So it has all those services that you need. And what is common about them is they are all tied together with a single ID, and then they are all built on a common platform. So when I look at a SUPERAPP, I look at these two things. Is there a single sign-on? Is there a common platform? Now, if I expand that a little bit into what Sachin also alluded to, how this came into picture when things were developing with WeChat or Alipay in China. Maybe when I look at Apple, I'm talking about an ecosystem which is only developed by Apple and is owned by Apple. When we talk about WeChat or Alipay, it's an extended ecosystem wherein, they call it mini programs. They can offer their platform and they invite others, third-party developers, to come and install or develop, a lighter version of their app onto that platform. So in a way, they have opened the ecosystem rather than keeping it closed in the case of Apple. With that in mind, if I have to see most of the apps that are, popping up today, are they super apps? I don't think they classify as super apps with this rigid definition in mind. But is there a potential to do a super app in a very wide or vague term as well? I think what Sachin mentioned, there are so many startups that are looking to get into an app-based business model, and they are, backed by venture capitals. The competition is so much that getting into a regional based or building a regional super app, it seems slightly difficult. But if I look at the other sides of things, let's say I'm looking at an organization who is trying to capture an end-to-end journey of its customer. I'll take example of a bank here, which is dispersing loans, DBS Bank dispersing housing loans to its customers. So what their proposition is, I'm not giving loans to my customers, I'm helping them buy a house. And when I take that end-to-end journey into picture, I am probably, integrating a property guru to help my customer look at the property first, and then helping them finding the right housing loan or solution, and then continuing this journey. So if you look at that end-to-end journey or supporting your customer or enhancing their experience across this journey, I think every organization has that need or has that, unmet need to support their customers by enabling more features on their apps.
Yeah. Sachin, so the definition, I think the key is this definition of super app. So what is really the definition? And Inderpreet is saying, it will be built on customer journeys. So how did you define? Is it minimum 5 services unrelated? Then is it a super app? Is that the definition?
Yeah, so my thinking is unrelated. When it's unrelated services, it's a super app concept. When it's a related service, I call it orchestration. So the example of which you gave for DBS Bank, for example, is when you are going into services which are, anyway, your customer is transacting with you, at the same time going into all these services which are related to this transaction. So it's a complete customer experience in fulfilling that one transaction, right? Instead of dealing with the multiple parties, if one guy can orchestrate the whole customer experience, make sure the customer experience is good. Okay, so I call that orchestration and not a super app concept, because super app becomes very, very wide concept. I think it's an often misused concept.
Correct. So is super app the right? So what is the right growth strategy for companies who are looking at building digital places, right? Digital strategies. We know many companies are looking at conglomerates, like Tata is now saying Tata Neo, and they are aggregating all their services in one. In Thailand, you have True trying to build a super app which integrates a multitude of their offerings into one. We will potentially see the same in Malaysia with Capital A, and we may see others as well. So is the idea of a super app the digital growth strategy for companies wanting to establish digital plays?
So my thinking is that you should be good in your business. So if you are an e-commerce player, are you among the top 2-3 e-commerce player in that country? Because again, super app phenomena, if you look at it, is it regional, is it country? In Southeast Asia, every country has its own payment system. You have Payla and GrabPay in Singapore. We have OVO and Grab in. We have OVO and there's a GoPay in Indonesia. Okay. Philippines has Gcash and PayMaya. Everyone has different payment system, right? So how can you have a very regional super app in the first place when the payment systems and the payment champions are different? So my thinking is, if you are number one or number two in your segment, if you are a top player in e-commerce or a top player in mobility, and then you are promoting services which are part of this. So if you're a retail player, you can enable logistics because that's anyway part of your e-commerce or retail journey. And so you can be orchestrator of those experiences which are involved in buying a product from e-commerce company, right? So you enable those products and go into related businesses, but make sure you are the leader in your one segment. Now, in Southeast Asia, unfortunately or fortunately, everyone is going into payment space. Now payment has become the mantra. Oh, I want to know everything about my customer is buying. Where is he buying? What time is buying? Why is buying? The whole life. I want to know 360-degree, whole life of the customer. What do you do with that now? Oh yeah, I can sell them. I can offer them lending products. They haven't found anything else to sell, but they are all trying to sell them lending and insurance products ultimately, right? So how many of them will succeed? Let's see. We'll know. But in the meantime, there's a lot of cash burn. Remember, in China there was no cash burn for Alipay and WeChat Pay. They actually were very dominant initially, and they use the dominance. Here, there's a lot of cash burn just to be the top wallet player. So there's a lot of difference in the how things are here.
So as a follow-up, you touched upon payments. So the question is financial services the end game for super apps? Because super apps don't make money, and they all seem to be, if you look at their business plan and projections and pitches to investors, oh, I will make all my money in financial services. So maybe the question is financial services the end game for all super apps, or anybody who wishes to have, let's say, even be an orchestrator of some services? Is it super critical to have financial services, or can you be an orchestrator without having the financial services component?
Yeah.
So many people on this call are saying, I'm building my own super app, right? So how crucial is it to have the financial services layer on it?
Yeah. So in Southeast Asia, the current thinking is I must have the payment. Now, I disagree with that approach because you will burn so much of money in the whole payment space in the hope that you will make money in the lending and insurance. Now, maybe I'm not denying there's some money in the lending and insurance, especially in developing countries where people don't have bank accounts. So how can you get, a loan? I mean, for example, Grab for sure knows which drivers are working hard, how many hours they are working, are they diligent and everything. So they can give loans to those drivers. That's true. But again, how many use cases are there? And those are more in the less developed countries. And in the meantime, what is the cost that you have to pay to become the dominant wallet player? So all these things have to be kept in mind. And in the meantime, you never know how regulators are going to react, because you look at, I think regulators are more active now, proactive now, compared to 5 years back. And I think China started this whole trend again in terms of regulation. They started the whole thing in terms of super apps, and now I think Chinese regulators have taken the lead. So we'll see how it goes. But I think one cannot be just relying on the financial services and what is the future revenue from those financial services. No, that cannot be a basis for you to actually invest into any business today.
Okay. I think
on that part, on financial services, to some extent agree with Sachin and what he mentioned earlier. It's not a way to look at it like, I want to have financial services and then build everything around it. You have the strongest or your core strength at the center, and then you develop everything around it. It could be either through partnerships or probably, then you slowly develop that service on your own. But the anchor should be, the core of it should be your strength. And the example of it could be AirAsia. They are not a traditional payments player who are venturing into a super app, but still they are leveraging their core assets, and their entire proposition is probably, surrounding around that.
Excellent. And so what should a telco do? Should a telco be looking at these digital adjacencies? And many telcos have said, okay, I want to build my digital app. I want to expand the offering. I think to some extent, the Indian telcos have made great progress. Both Airtel with its Thanks app as well as Jio has made some good progress in becoming providing multitude of services. You may or may not call them super apps. So Sachin, what should telcos be doing? Should they be building and getting into these adjacencies and digital plays, or should they be sticking to their core? What is your assessment as an investment analyst, having seen companies make multitude of these bets over the last decade?
So I think first thing telcos need to do is to make sure they have a good customer experience. I think that's where there are a lot of gaps. Let's all accept it. That's the first, that's the first place to start the journey, the customer experience. Now, when I'm comparing telco in terms of customer experience, I'm not comparing a telco to a US telco or to any, Korean telcos. I'm comparing the telco to Netflix, because end of the day, customer has a choice to watch it from Netflix or via telco. So there I see a lot of telcos have a lot of gaps, and it is not execution issue. It's an issue that fundamentally they have invested in those systems, for the last 10-15 years. They used to buy their billing system from MDocs, and there's a lot of legacy software systems. It will take time to get it right. But in the meantime, there's something which telco has, and that is they have three things. I would say they have a subscriber base, they have a profitable balance sheet, they have a good balance sheet with profits, and they're known to be conservative. So can you use this to enter businesses whereby people will be happy to keep their money in some of the telco related businesses, because telcos are known to them, and while they can use the new economy players to get the customer experience right. So I don't think telcos should get on their own into this digital businesses. I think it's always better to partner with these players for two reasons. One is customer experience. Second is ability to burn more money, more cash. Telcos need cash. They need to invest in 4G. They need to invest in 5G. They also need to pay dividends to their shareholders. They cannot keep burning the money, right? So use your strength, leverage your strengths, and offer these strengths in partnership with the new economy players. And I think to me, that is the recipe. And otherwise, keep focusing on your core strengths. Now, data center is something which telcos can do, and that's part of their business. Similarly, ICT services, which is part of the enterprise services suite, is something on a selective basis you can do. You cannot compete sometimes with the likes of Accentures and TCS all the time, but on a selective basis where you have good partners, good people, you have boots on the ground, because now there's a shortage of IT talent. If you have those people on the ground, then go for it. So I think these are the few areas, but again, on your own, do what you do best. Outside your comfort area. Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying stick with your core. Don't try to get into e-commerce. Don't try to get into becoming a super app, because you're going to burn, you're going to lose. Please, I expect you to give dividends. You stick and you're good at it, generate enough free cash flow.
Yeah, exactly. And if tomorrow you don't invest in the 4G and the 5G networks, then regulators will haunt you. People will come back. There's a lot of complaints, right? You'll face. You don't want to face those situations, but you do partnership with these new economy players. Let them help you, and leverage your strengths.
Okay. Let me. So here is an investment analyst. Let me go to an industry analyst. So Interpreet, what are these telcos doing? Are they, because as an industry analyst, I see you talk about two things. You talk about non-connectivity. You talk about enterprise business as two big growth engines. Are telcos making progress in Asia? Are you happy with their progress?
I think these are two big opportunity areas for telcos. Having said that, I will say, it is also influenced by, what are the regional market dynamics, or what are the, local market dynamics. So if a telco is doing very good in media in South Korea, we cannot expect a telco in Singapore to take a similar business strategy. So assess the local market conditions first, And if I have to, just go back to the super app concept, can telcos win there? Should telcos do that? For my opinion, yes, they should definitely. Perhaps, if we look at every other company, even if we look at Uber or, Grab, I think one rationale behind all of them is to make a best use of their assets. So I think my suggestion or my aligning would be telco should make the best use of their assets, which are their ready customer base. Most of them has huge number of subscribers. They have a lot of access to customer data. And perhaps on top of it, they are a trusted brand. They have been in the market. They have been doing successful business for quite some time. Now, coming back to the enterprise and the non-connectivity business, what we have seen in the past few months, quarters, years, there is a significant progress that telcos have made within the enterprise business. They have acquired a lot of brands to expand their regional play. I think that's one of the toughest or the biggest challenge when a telco is looking at the enterprise business. How do they go and expand or tap into the SME market in a foreign country? They have to build those partnerships, or perhaps they have to acquire some local logos to serve those SMEs, to know their needs, because SME needs would vary very differently from market to market. So if this execute the strategy well, there are a lot of potentials for them to have in the enterprise business as well as in the non-connectivity segments.
Excellent.
Maybe I can add a little bit. So Indrapreet's point is well taken. So let me give the context of this, right? So India and China, yes, big countries, right? So the telcos have the scale. They have the scale and big size and local reach. But if you're talking of Southeast Asia, most telcos are small, countries are small. How can you do regional businesses, right? Unless you're very strong partners. And as I mentioned, if you don't have boots on the ground, it doesn't work today. So idea is you only a very big guys or very strong partnership can help you succeed in the enterprise side of business in Southeast Asia. I'm not talking of India and China. India and China is a total different ball game altogether, right? There are two players in India now, more or less, and China again has a limited number of players, and the regulations, everything is so different there. So in Southeast Asia, I am not seeing many players doing it, and those are doing it, they are also taking a lot of acquisition route. It's an expensive route, but I think today telcos margin have come to a level where they think even IT revenues are attractive. I think 10 years back, they used to think of, my telco business is so high margin. Why should I go into a ICT or IT business? Now we have come to a point where both the margins are quite equal, and there's a high growth opportunity in ICT. So it suddenly starts to make sense from opportunity point of view.
Yeah. We have one raised hand. So I think Peter, if you can allow that, I can't unfortunately see on my screen, but if you can allow that individual to pose the question, please. Yeah, you are unmuted. Go ahead and say your question, please. Okay, I can't hear you. Okay, we'll try again in a few minutes, or you can type the question in the chat bar and chat or in the Q&A screen, and we'll try and address. So maybe next question then. What I've observed, Sachin, is as markets mature, right? At that point, telcos are not the first to react, but eventually they catch up. We had ISPs. There was a hoo-ha about ISPs. They all went IPO. They had great valuation. And then eventually telcos became the biggest ISPs. They set up the biggest broadband businesses, and they generated significant success over time. Is something similar happening in this space? We are seeing valuations of all these digital companies beginning to take a hit now. And telcos are generating reasonable free cash flow if you have not been locked in with 5G investments. Does it mean that the market is entering a maturity phase, so that gives them an opportunity to go and acquire some of these assets and integrate them, and they are now mature enough, they're building strong tech organizations? So is that something even worth considering? will somebody end up going and saying, hey, maybe Grab is a good asset at the price it is at currently?
So I think opportunities are there for telcos, but only for players with very strong balance sheet. Because as you rightly said, 5G is such a again another investment. We just had 4G 5-6 years back, and there's another big capex cycle for 5G. So you can't compromise on the networks, right? So you need to invest in 5G at the same time. You need to invest in all these new opportunities. A lot of telcos, if you look at them, they're divesting their towers to kind of raise the money to invest in 5G, at the same time invest in these new digital opportunities. So I don't think you will see the ISPs kind of era now, but at least what I can see, there's a lot of consolidation now among telcos. We don't have, we have seen in Thailand, we have seen in Malaysia and Indonesia already. Singapore is probably on the verge of having one. So with all this consolidation, they're trying to prepare their balance sheet, which can withstand the pressures of 5G and give them the scale to engage in this high, I call it the high capex businesses. Data center is not a business for light-hearted people. You need to put the cash upfront and wait for the returns over many years, right? So all these issues are there, and I think I can clearly see telcos with a very strong balance sheet, or those who want to create a strong balance sheet, they can succeed in these lines of business.
Yeah, I look at somebody like Disney, right? Disney wanted to compete with Netflix. They went and acquired this very small streaming company, which had the base technology and platform. And then they put all the Disney content over it. And now, in a matter of 3 years, they have close to 200 million customers globally. So, isn't that, and we can see SK Telecom has done that. They've gone and acquired many, many small digital native companies and integrating them and creating those value propositions. So I do think, there are many localized offerings in every market, and this could be a good opportunity for telco. But maybe in the next question, Sachin, is today a great time, because you are an investment analyst, I cannot ask that to Inderpreet, is today a good time to invest in Grab?
It's a tough question, and we will need clarity on a few things. How, what are you doing about, what about the cash burning? Are we at the tail end of the cash burning, or we are in the middle of the cash burning cycle? I think that's the first question that market needs to know. And if you ask me, mobility and food delivery, they all benefited from COVID. Not mobility. Mobility will probably benefit now, but food delivery did benefit a lot from COVID, and we are now kind of leaving COVID behind. So there are too many unanswered questions at this point of time, and if you ask me, the gist is profitability. In last year, no one cared, whether you're a software company, whether you are a e-commerce company, or whether you are a mobility company or logistic company, everyone was trading 10 to 15 times revenue multiple. But it does matter what business you are in, because if you are a software company, you can get 40 to 50% kind of EBITDA margins. If you are e-commerce, you can get 20-25% EBITDA margins. If you are a mobility company, your margins are even lower, 15-20%. Logistics company even lower. So if your margins on the same revenue are lower, then how can you trade at similar valuations? So that is something which was happening till last year. Now I think market has come to senses. Every business should get the valuation based on their long-term EBITDA margins, because anyway, none of them is profitable now. But what are the long-term EBITDA margin potential? So based on that, I think revenue multiples are in a flux now. Okay, could a business like Grab, what's the right multiple? I don't think it's 10 times. Is it 3 times, 4 times? Maybe that's fair enough for mobility business.
Wow. Yeah. Oh. So Sachin, and before I go to Andy, has put a very good, provocative comment. He's tempting us to respond. So we will respond to you, Andy. But maybe before that, I want to ask Sachin a question. So Sachin, you have said it is difficult to find a value in Grab today, maybe, right? Because you're not sure about the multiple. And so you're saying it may be today, if you had $1 to invest and you had to choose between a telco and a Grab, you would actually invest in a telco.
Well, the reality is that telcos are, number one, they're profitable. Number two, they pay dividends. And most important, this is most important, they're cheap. Okay, something, so because in the pursuit of growth, what has happened, the telcos have been forgotten. Okay, they were considered as lackluster, they haven't had that kind of sexy growth. But the reality is they have all the ingredients which we call it cash flow generation. And fortunately, some of the telcos like Singtel, right, they do have good associates in India, Indonesia. They are having good growth. There's a consolidation in these markets in India, in Indonesia, and in markets like Australia. Even there, the consolidation was there, right? So you're right, telco was not a good business. That's why all these smaller telcos have merged together, and now it looks more interesting, let's say, than 15-20 months back. So I'll think that till we get more clarity on this super apps, till the time, telcos are not a bad investment.
Okay, great. So this sets up beautifully for Andy's question and comment, right? So you're saying we should go in, telcos is undervalued, great time to get in. Andy is saying, hey, you know what, we need to lose more money. Let's get into digital businesses. So then you will form and change your opinion. Now, partly Andy's opinion is influenced by what's happening in Malaysia, right? So I think we talked about we talked briefly about the huge amount of capex that is needed for building 5G networks. And so what Malaysia has done is maybe one of the first in the world in terms of the single wholesale network. And that gives telcos this incredible opportunity now to free up that cash flow and invest in building this super app. So does that change your position in the context of Malaysian market? Would you recommend them to do this? You know, I think that's why Andy is not happy with our response.
It does. I mean, there are different questions. If there's a one 5G network instead of two, then there's a kind of monopoly on the 5G network, right? But I think given the situation Malaysia had, I think they kind of dealt with it in a proper manner, because the decision was made a long time back. So they have decided to give some stakes to the telco so that, you know, it's run efficiently as a network, 5G network. But you're right, it does free up some cash flow for telcos. So they won't compete only on network quality. They compete on the services which they offer, because network quality will be one of the components of the overall service. The only question is, those use cases are still being under testing. You know, what do you do with the low latency 5G? Oh, we can do a lot of stuff, but have you seen it? We will have to wait for some time to see all those stuff. It's probably going to happen, because networks, you know, low latency, I think is a good thing. So even Singapore has two major 5G networks, right? One is being shared between M1 and StarHub, and other being Singtel. And in countries where regulators did not do anything, telcos themselves did something. They merged themselves, right? In Thailand, they merged. And in Indonesia, they have also merged. So you're right. This is good for telcos that they're merging, or there are fewer 5G networks. It's a good news.
I think
Okay,
just to add to that, to what Sachin just mentioned, if we look at how things have developed, it's not just that Malaysia has a single 5G network. Even the telcos themselves, they are collaborating to, you know, roll out a single network where the business case does not justify. For instance, what is their go-to approach for a rural area? They are probably, you know, sharing the RAN part or the access part of the network between different competitors. So the approach is perhaps, you know, changing from being a very hard competitor to each other to perhaps, you know, a co-competitor kind of an approach.
Yeah, actually, I was reading Andy's question. He's saying that MVNO can do a lot of things, right? His point is that as an MVNO, he can do a lot of things. He doesn't have to only provide connectivity, because I can bundle in a lot of things along with connectivity. And that's the right thing to say, as long as the price of the network, because telcos are charging a wholesale price to the MVNO. I mean, as long as that price is competitive, then MVNOs are in good shape. But we don't know what will happen in the 5G world. What will be the pricing of those connectivity services, which is called as wholesale? What is the wholesale price being offered to the MVNOs? If it is competitive enough, well, again, I have my reasons to doubt, because someone who invests in the 5G network, will they give you a competitive, wholesale price? Let's see how it goes. But yes, if you get a good price, you know the customer very well, you can bring in a lot of other stuff from various other companies and offer a suite of services. That's possible entirely. Yeah.
Okay. How do you, there's a question from Varnika. She's a financial industry analyst, and her question is, how do you differentiate between a marketplace and a super app? Is there a difference? How do you, yeah.
So marketplace, I mean, is a place where you're talking of an e-commerce marketplace, right? So if an e-commerce marketplace is an e-commerce marketplace,
it's an e-commerce marketplace, or a, you have Paytm, which is also now a marketplace, right? It's got all services. In a way, it's a super app, but also a marketplace. DBS has got property marketplace, car marketplaces. So is the term kind of interchangeable?
No. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but if I have to differentiate, I'll call them orchestrators. Orchestrators are people who just take care of the customer experience, while at the same time, those services are very related services. These are not a massage or the salon services simply because you control the payment. I come to you. These are services which actually you come to a bank for those services, but instead of going separately, if a bank can help you fulfill those services through its partners, that's what I call as orchestration, right? So that orchestration concept is very different from a super app concept. Super app concept from China, I think I have not seen this super app concept anywhere outside China. Or maybe some people call Mercado Libre again as a super app in emerging markets, but that's it. Is Amazon a super app? I don't think so. So I don't see any of these super app phenomena. I think this the little bit of gas has to come out of the super app phenomena, and realize that I have to be the best of the breed in my business. That's all. Yeah.
Excellent. So maybe let me take that question to Inderpreet, right? So Inderpreet, we have telecom companies making this tough decisions now, many of them, right? Let's say the enterprise business is a given. We don't have a choice. With the enormous amount of money they put in 5G, they have to transition, build that business. I think that's for the non-connectivity business in telecom. If you are the CEO of a telecom company, what would you do? How would you approach it, given that, given the financial investor community is going to follow Sachin's advice, which is, hey, don't distract yourself, go into adjacencies that you are bloody good at, because we have seen historically every telco trying to get into all these other adjacencies, they have failed, right? Am I right, Sachin, to say that traditionally telcos have failed in going beyond connectivity services, right? And therefore you don't necessarily have the competence to do it. Right, Sachin, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's not one telco has failed. None of the telcos have. It's not an execution issue. It's not an execution issue.
It's not an execution.
It's an issue where telcos have the mindset to generate the cash, to invest in the networks, to pay the dividends, right? And even so, they can't compromise on these two values. If they compromise on the networks, and anyway they didn't have high growth, and if you don't even deliver the growth, if no growth and then no dividends, and good and not a bad quality network, why should the telco remain, right? So these are existential questions for telcos.
Okay, so Inderpreet,
if not from
go ahead.
If not from a pure investment perspective or dividends perspective per se, I think I view that telcos have done considerably well going into non-connectivity or into enterprise segments. Of course, we cannot compare them apple to apple with an ICT player or with the likes of Amazon or Microsoft, but there is a sweet spot for them. Perhaps, if they focus on customer experience, or if they focus on improving the customer journeys. I think even if they approach the enterprise business and they focus on the customer experience, there is a sweet spot for them.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially, and that's our take as well, that, as consumers, we have hundreds of journeys that we will all do, be it for a house or education or travel or food, etc. And as you, I think, have rightly said, it is unlikely that we will stick to all of it to one super app. Even after so many years of being with Grab, if Gojek gives me a better deal to go from here to point A to point B, I switch to Gojek instantly, right? Or if Food Panda gives me a better deal, I switch to Food Panda for it. So it's hard to get that loyalty in this extremely competitive market. But there may be special services, special journeys that you can take, and you can orchestrate a better value for the customer in those journeys, and that could be the differentiation. Those could be the value that you can create. Okay, I have posed a lot of questions. I know there's a good audience listening, but I'm not seeing any questions. If you guys are out here listening, at least say hello on the chat, or post some more difficult questions to Sachin, because he's still smiling, which is not good. So we got to make life a little difficult for our immersion provocators. Still no type, no response. Is my chat hung or what is happening? Okay, Sachin, you have any question? Okay. Question should be how to, okay. Oh, Andy agrees. The question should be how to convert customers to consumers to telco where super app cover the ecosystem. Yeah. And I think one of the key things that has been said again and again, if you see the word that has been said the most since the beginning of this call, is partnerships, right? So that means if you cannot execute partnerships well, you cannot win. And I think we need to all master the art of building partnerships to unlock value. So that, in my opinion, is a key takeaway. Any other questions from people on the call? Any comments? Any suggestions? Sachin, you have any question for me for a change?
I know you are a long-time believer in telcos, and so I think I don't dispute your faith in them. In fact, as I recommended to you, invest in telcos, right? Yeah, but the only thing which I want to clarify is that we invest for different reasons. You invest for digital experiences, while I invest for consistency, for dividends, and probably a solid 5G network going forward. I mean, to me, these are the reasons to invest in them, and of course, the cheap valuation. So, I mean, I don't want to change your opinion about this, but I mean, if you can, I think you might have some. Are you seeing some evidences on the ground of some telcos trying to change the whole narrative of digital experiences?
Yeah. No, I think a good point, Sachin. I think, see, when we look at all the non-digital native companies, the banks were the best in terms of responding to the digital challenge. We all have embraced digital in banking and financial services better than any others, right? So we are big fans of DBS and OCBC, and all of you guys have taken all of us to that digital experience, and we are digital first with our banks. The telcos are a decade late almost in that, right? And having said that, telcos have always been late, but they play when markets and markets mature and when it gets come. They are good in operational excellence. They are good when every technology is mature and customers are also mature. They are not good in building and curating new customers. So I think we are reaching that maturity level as consumers for a multitude of services. And that's where I think telcos are better positioned to play. Right? So we as consumers, we may not be restricted if you are in Malaysia or in Indonesia or in some countries, you may not be restricted with consuming 1 or 2 streaming platforms. We may need 10 streaming platforms because we have a voracious appetite to consume all kinds of language content, different kinds of sporting content, etc., etc. And as that commoditization happens, then the telcos become very naturally placed to create value. Right? So that is the only difference. I invest for exactly the same reasons as you said. Telcos are relatively strong. They create much more better free cash flows, and they tend to do better when markets and technologies mature. And I think this time the telcos are, they're investing in enterprise business. They're building technology teams. For once, I can see telcos are, softwareizing their networks, right? They are integrating network and IT teams. It is all, they wouldn't talk about it so openly, but just because of the pandemic, now they're talking about it so much more. They can reduce their cost to serve substantially, I think by at least 50% if they continue down this trajectory. So I think those are the also reasons why I am quite excited about what these guys can do. And the digital businesses, as you mentioned, they're struggling to find avenues to make consistent return or profitability for their customers. Okay, any other quick comments or questions, guys, from the audience? We are almost coming to the close of this. Any other tough questions? I think we have one more poll question. Let's try that poll question. Now that we have had some discussions on the subject, can we have the poll question, please? Yeah. So it's a relatively simple poll question, given that we talked so much about it. Should telcos, banks, conglomerates, and we know many of them in this region, some of them have even earmarked certain monies in their future planning to build digital apps or super apps and integrating multitude of services. Should they look at super apps as a digital growth strategy? Yes, they need to build end-to-end propositions themselves. Yes, they need to build it with partnerships. Or no, you're convinced that, hey, you know what, we should stick with our core. Let's, data center is a huge growth opportunity. Enterprise is a huge growth opportunity. Let's stick with that. And let's enable the Grabs and others to, fight this battle of losing money, educating customers, transitioning them to digital. So yeah, if you can take that vote, it'll be cool. Let's see the results as we come along. Any other questions, comments, guys, from people in the audience? I had a couple of other good, tough questions. You quite are in agreement with this single wholesale network strategy. Do you think, Sachin, other countries should follow suit in this as we look at network? Is this the way forward in the future?
Actually, we haven't seen any other country follow the single network thing. And because ultimately, we have to think beyond 5G. We are thinking of, if you're thinking of 6G, then how will you transition from 5G to 6G if you just have a one network in place? So I think there's a thinking that to ensure that the competition in the market, there should be two networks, at least two networks in a country. Single a little bit is okay for 5G, but it will kind of distort your path or create problems in the further transition to the next technology. I think that's one of the thinking behind it. Yeah, just a little bit more long-term thinking. Yeah.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, if we can have the results of the poll, just to know what the audience overall thinks. If we can have the results of the poll is, 71% agree that they need to build it with partnerships. They can agree. They can be. So in a way, they are all agreeing that we got to be orchestrators, right? Orchestrated together with partnerships. Very few are saying don't do anything in digital. So everybody is excited about telling a better growth story. Yeah, so fair enough. I think that's what we are seeing, right? So I think we just later tonight, I think we will release this report on our platform, and you guys are welcome to come and check us out at twimbit.com. And our estimate is that the non-connectivity business for telcos in 2021 grew 20% for the top 38 operators in the region, right? Whereas the overall telco revenue growth was only about 5%. Enterprise business is also beginning to show some good resilient growth. So telcos are beginning to execute well. You have the likes of Globe and Airtel and SoftBank and others, doing reasonably well in building their, payments businesses, right? Airtel as a fairly substantial and successful now Airtel Payments Bank, I think, which also reported EBITDA positive in the last financial year as well. So payments, at least there are 5 telcos in Asia who have done well. Then you have the likes of Singtel doing well with the enterprise business. They are now a role model for many operators. Entity has done well across the region, acquiring data center assets, other managed services assets, and becoming a fairly big global brand. So there are many Asian telcos who are kind of doing exciting things. Yeah. Okay, we have one last question which we can take. Is Orchestrator the only growth story? Are there any other avenues people should explore?
Yeah. So maybe I can take this question. Why should you be the orchestrator all the time?
So the question was, Sachin, is Orchestrator the only growth opportunity for telcos? Are there some other opportunities?
So no, actually Orchestrator is being the center of the platform, but a telco doesn't have to be all the time the center of the platform. You should be, you can be someone who can actually offer your services on other platforms. So you can be a player who's being orchestrated on someone else's platform. So that's again, you have to be where customers' eyes are, wherever the customers are. You should be there, because if you are not the biggest platform in the country, you should be on the biggest platform in that country. So that's the way to think about it, right?
Excellent. Fabulous, Sachin. Sachin, thank you very much for your participation and time. I think this is just the beginning of this conversation on SUPERAPPS. We hope to do more research on the space, collaborate with more experts like Sachin, and share with you real ideas and next steps that you can take as you look at transitioning your businesses to digital. Thank you very much, Inderpreet, for being there and providing your perspective as an industry analyst as well. And for all of you who attended, apologies for this inconvenience associated with the sudden log out of Zoom in a few minutes, and we'll endeavor to make sure that doesn't happen in subsequent ones. And look forward to connecting with all of you. Feel free to connect with Sachin, Inderpreet, or myself on LinkedIn, and it would be lovely to continue the conversation. So Sachin, thank you again, and have a fabulous evening.